Hi guys, Billy S here, and it's the end of Dark Souls month. Aww. Now, don't be sad. We have a right belter of a video today to end off my coverage. We're ranking all the Dark Souls 1 bonfires! Damn, you could at least fake it, guys, come on. This may be a dumb ranking to some, but bonfires are such a staple of the series, and in Dark Souls 1 they act as both a checkpoint system and a way to level up your stats. So why not take a look at where they're placed and arbitrarily judge them from a variety of factors such as level placement, aesthetic, and my own biases that simply cannot be quantified. With 45 of the f***ers to get through, we'll keep each entry short and sweet. So without further ado, all 45 Dark Souls bonfires ranked. Let's do this, and be sure to tell me your favorite bonfires down below. At number 45, we have the second Catacombs bonfire hidden behind an illusory wall just before patches. Aesthetically, being behind the Catacombs waterfall and able to be seen from Patch's platform is pretty neat. But this is the only bonfire in the game I forgot about when compiling this list. I guarantee many players don't know this bonfire even exists, especially once you know how to get down to Vamos and activate his bonfire in the remaster and shortcut to the bottom of the Catacombs. For the crime of simply being forgettable, I have no choice but to put it at the bottom of my list. At number 44, we have the third Demon Ruins bonfire directly before the Centipede Demon. While it makes the boss run back to Centipede nice and easy, this bonfire comes directly after unlocking an elevator shortcut back to Quelaag's domain, with easy access to two different bonfires. Couldn't they have placed this bonfire at the bottom of the routes as well? Make our lives easier, it doesn't need to be here. At number 43, we have the Sanctuary Garden bonfire at the start of the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. This bonfire is placed here simply because its utility is to be a starting point for the DLC and nothing more. It connects to a single boss fight and then becomes a bonfire you will never use again in your playthrough. I like the Root Cavern aesthetic, but with a lack of real purpose, aside from not forcing you to rerun to Manus' DLC rift each time you die to the Sanctuary Guardian, it's at the bottom of my list. At number 42, we have the Darkroot Basin Cavern bonfire. Placed after a tough Black Knight, right before the Grass Crest Shield, this bonfire serves two purposes. Being a quick way to get back to the Hydra boss, or Havel the Rock in case you die to either, and being a shortcut to Valley of the Drakes so you can farm for dragon scales. If the Drakes weren't so awfully placed in the valley, this bonfire could serve as a good hub for New Londo Ruins expeditions after you break the seal, which would have raised this guy's placement tremendously. But unless you decide to come through Valley of the Drakes in the early game up to this bonfire, you're not gonna see much use of it in your playthrough. At number 41, we have the Altar of the Gravelord bonfire, obtained for defeating Gravelord Nito. The next 5 entries on this list are all bonfires that appear after killing specific bosses, because their utility is solely on giving the player a way to walk back to the wider world. I think all these locations are cool aesthetically, but I can't justify a high placement when they don't get used more than once, even if in some cases, it genuinely pains me to do so. Nito is at the bottom of this chain, as killing him removes access to his Covenant, making his bonfire functionally useless. At number 40, we have the Bed of Chaos bonfire, obtained for defeating said boss. Another case of being trapped and forced to warp out. I simply prefer the Bed of Chaos boss arena and think its aesthetic is more interesting than Nito's, with the warped, gnarled routes. Not much else to say really, I think it's neat, if a little claustrophobic. At number 39, we have the Crystal Cave bonfire, obtained for defeating Seath the Scaleless. This bonfire is unique for being the only one in this category where you don't need it to warp away. You have full access to the Crystal Cave from this bonfire, making it a great place to farm for purging stones. But that's about it. There's not much of interest in the Crystal Caves, so I find myself never warping here in normal gameplay. At number 38, we have the Chasm of the Abyss bonfire, obtained for defeating Manus Daddy of the Abyss. The bonfire places higher than the other three purely because of its aesthetic. The roaring dark flame barriers surrounding the area, Manus' dug-up grave just out of sight of the firelight. This bonfire serves no real purpose, but that doesn't stop it from serving it to the gamers, honey! At number 37, we have The Abyss. The best boss bonfire by far. There's nothing quite like falling into the abyss and seeing this inky blackness. All you can view is a singular bonfire guiding you towards it. This bonfire also has the added bonus of being the Darkwraith Covenant location if you choose to go that route. And with that added utility and its superior aesthetic, it takes a higher spot than its compatriots. If we were ranking purely on looks though, I just want to go on record saying this would be in my top 10. At number 36, we have the Dark Moon Tomb Bonfire, home of the optional femboy of the Souls series, Gwendolyn, and his Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant. Some bonfires fall into the Covenant category, acting as warps for players in Covenant so they can rank up. And as I personally don't dabble in online play, these bonfires have less significance for me. The Dark Moon Tomb is an iconic location, but the bonfire is awkward to use if you want to actually explore Anor Londo from it, so I tend to skip it altogether until I go and beat up the optional femboy of the Souls series, Gwendolyn. At number 35, we have the Chamber of the Princess Bonfire, obtained by defeating Ornstein and Smough. Home of many Dark Souls memes, Guinevere's Covenant acts as a warping point in Anor Londo for those looking to be a part of the Princess Guard Covenant. It ranks higher than the optional femboy of the Souls series, Gwendolyn, because I use this bonfire a lot if I need to visit the Giant's blacksmith or have business in the Inner Cathedral, as you don't have to wait for the extremely slow stair lift outside. At number 34, we have the Sunlight Altar Bonfire in the Undead Parish, obtained by avoiding the Hellkite Dragon on the bridge. This bonfire acts as a nice optional starting point for the parish area if you have the effort to handle the dragon. It also acts as a Covenant bonfire for the Warriors of Sunlight once you've unlocked it, so because this bonfire has good utility, it is this high, but after your first parish exploration, you won't be using this bonfire outside of Covenant content. At number 33, we have the Stone Dragon Bonfire at the bottom of the world in Ash Lake. This is a purely biased pick. I just really love dragons. The hollow you find yourself in is aesthetically gorgeous, and unlike some Covenants, you really have to go out of your way to find this place, a reward for your hard work. You can also get the Dragon Greatsword here, an extra bonus that makes this bonfire well worth coming to as a strength boy. At number 32, we have the second Northern Undead Asylum Bonfire. Placed in a small, isolated sewer room, this bonfire is a reminder of your cowardice in the face of adversity. It also acts as a soft barrier that forces you to complete the tutorial to re-access your main bonfire and get to the boss. It's also, in my opinion, the better bonfire of the two here to use for the Stray Demon boss fight, as you have less chance of aggroing the hollows who can sometimes follow you down into the arena. But for everything else in the Asylum, I'd rather use its main bonfire. At number 31, we have the second Tomb of the Giants bonfire hidden in a small crevasse that most people won't notice. This bonfire normally would rank far lower on my list, as the missed potential for its placement is an egregious sin. Why would they not place it where you can see Ash Lake before the Nito Cave? However, it stays out of my lower rankings because, well, I still use this bonfire. It is the optimal location to run to Nito from, and its utility, while a bit botched, still does its job. At number 30, we have the Burrowing Rockworm Bonfire of the Demon Ruins. As I mentioned in my area rankings videos, I enjoy the concept of a bonfire you have to earn from basic enemies, and this bonfire cuts on some of the tedium of running along the boring path of this area. It just doesn't rank higher because I really dislike the enemy that guards this bonfire to a staggering degree. But I wanted to reward the idea and the concept that this bonfire had, as opposed to the bonfire itself. And at number 29, we have the first Demon Ruins bonfire on a hill overlooking the ruins with a gorgeous view of the ancient temples and the dome containing Lost Izalith. I love this area's aesthetic so much. You even have friends vibing nearby. But where this bonfire loses me completely is its utility. You never really shortcut back to this bonfire, it's just a marking point for a larger level. The only Demon Ruin shortcut takes you closer to the Daughter of Chaos bonfire, making this one obsolete pretty quickly. At number 28, we have the Lost Izalith entrance bonfire, found after defeating the Centipede Demon. There are many bonfires in the late game that I classify as these entrance category bonfires, meaning their sole purpose is to be a checkpoint at the start of a larger level, but often these bonfires don't get looped back to, so their utility is only as useful as your first time entering. Despite meeting Solaire the Husbando, you will never see this bonfire again once you unlock either the Lost Izalith shortcut or the bonfire behind the illusory wall later in the level. At number 27, we have the first Tomb of the Giants bonfire right down next to Patches. This bonfire is devious, as unlike other entrance bonfires, if you come down here without the ability to warp, the journey back through the catacombs is brutal. So level design wise, I'm not sure if I like this bonfire. Aesthetically though, I love that you can see out into Lost Izalith, giving you a small glimpse of light as you prepare yourself for the rest of Tomb of the Giants. At number 26, we have the Great Hollow bonfire. At the tippity top of one of my least favorite areas in the game, this bonfire is hidden behind multiple illusory walls. The aesthetic is pretty standard for the Great Hollow, but I can't deny that finding this bonfire for the first time and realizing there's an entirely new area to explore is exciting. The prospect of delving deep for secrets while knowing this bonfire is placed so you can homeward bone back up if things get too difficult, I've gotta respect it. At number 25, we have the secret bonfire in Lost Izalith, hidden behind an illusory wall in the lake of copy-paste undead dragon lower torsos. Technically, this bonfire has the quickest run back to the Bed of Chaos, making it the ideal bonfire for Lost Izalith. But I really don't enjoy needing to switch rings every time I spawn here so I can run across the lava. I'd rather just take the longer jog from Quailag's sister, even if it means running past a tough Titanite demon on my journey. But if this is your primary Izalith bonfire, I can see this being ranked higher on the list. You get a lovely view of the city outside, and I've gone on record before praising Lost Izalith's visual design, though putting it behind an illusory wall was a genuinely asshole move. At number 24, we have the first Catacombs bonfire, placed directly next to a switch needed to open the path ahead. You have to dispatch a necromancer before you can light the bonfire. Thus, I have to give praise, as this cave teaches you the main mechanic of the catacombs: switches and necromancers. Where it loses points for me is in its visual design. Not because it's bad, but because it's so grotesque seeing cockroaches undulating across the walls that I would rather be anywhere else. This is my go-to Catacombs bonfire, and it's the same for all of you, I'm sure. At number 23, we have the first Duke's Archives bonfire, placed directly above the two Iron Tusks. This bonfire is ultimately the most forgettable of the three in this area, as you have no reason to come back to it after your first encounter with Seath. But given first-timers will die a lot to those channel-buffing boyos up the elevator, it's good to have a rest point. The room itself highlights the beauty of the archives, and really sets the tone for the area to come. At number 22, making it into the top half of our list, is the Ulasil Sanctuary bonfire. This is your primary bonfire for the Royal Woods DLC area, and is a gorgeous glade complete with Elizabeth, the NPC mushroom who requests us to save Dusk of Ulasil. It's a glorified entryway bonfire, but the location is stunning, and a nice reprieve after the Sanctuary Guardian boss. And this bonfire eventually becomes the grave of Artorias, so it gets bonus points from me for that. At number 21, we have the Anor Londo Firekeeper bonfire, which you can find just before Anor Londo's entry elevator. Here you meet the Darkmoon Knightess, who can upgrade your Estus Flask as she is a Firekeeper. This is especially handy upon a first visit, as if you're following the game's intended path, you'll have a Firekeeper soul from Blighttown handy that you couldn't cash in because the Firelink Firekeeper was dead. Beyond that, the room itself is a bit bland, which knocks it some points, but I did use this bonfire a ton in my first few playthroughs, so it holds a nostalgic place in my heart. At number 20, we have the Ulasil Township Dungeon bonfire leading into the Chasm of the Abyss. One of my favourite entrance bonfires in the game, this places this highly purely for the aesthetic alone. I love the destroyed remains of the dungeon, knowing this was where the people of Ulasil tortured and imprisoned Manus before the Abyss overwhelmed them. You can see the remains of his chains on the floor, and the busted cells leading up to the bonfire tell a tragic tale, all culminating in an inky blackness awaiting you beyond. At number 19, we have the Upper Blighttown bonfire. This is another bonfire with evil placement in mind, as to reach it, you have to fight your way from the depths and through a series of enemies to get here, meaning once you rest, you're locked in. Further emphasized by the hostile surroundings of this safe space. It feels like if you stray a few steps away, you'll get attacked. You get a lovely view of a sheer drop down to the swamp and an idea of the area you'll be spending your time in, but if this bonfire wasn't here, getting down to the swamp would be far more brutal than it's worth. At number 18, we have the Inner Anor Londo bonfire, found after dispatching the famous Anor Londo archers. Here, you can of course flirt with Solaire and rest your weary head before tackling the Inner Cathedral. This is my favourite segment of Anor Londo, and I've spent many hours in these halls exploring and retreating to this bonfire. It's where I honed my parrying skills, so for that alone, this bonfire has earned a high spot. It also shares similarities with our previous entry, as once you rest here, you have to get through the level to re-access the outside of Anor Londo once more. Smart placement from software. At number 17, we have the Darkroot Garden bonfire, hidden behind an illusory wall next to the Artoria store. The only bonfire in Darkroot Garden, and it's hidden away. Come on, Dark Souls. Some people might genuinely be running from Andre to Sif or the Butterfly. This bonfire is here both for aesthetics, as you get a gorgeous view from the sheer cliff of the land where Ulasil once stood, and also for its utility, as it's placed right outside the Forest Hunters' battlegrounds for PvP, and acts as a perfect midway point for people looking to go fight Sif or the Moonlight Butterfly. It's perfectly placed for the area it's in, and I always love areas that rely on a singular bonfire because they tend to be more well designed. Also, I'm biased, sue me. At number 16, we have the Blighttown Swamp bonfire. Going into this ranking, I knew both of Blighttown's bonfires would be in my top half of the list, I just didn't know who would come out on top. But the Swamp bonfire has always been an oh thank god a bonfire moment in my playthroughs. It's a safe haven in a sea of sludge and mosquitoes, and is probably the bonfire more people remember because you don't have to skip it if you master key through Valley of the Drakes. This bonfire does lose some points for aesthetics, being a glorified sewer grate, but it's still in a solid spot on this list. At number 15, we have the third Duke's Archives bonfire. Obtained after escaping Seath's jail tower and making your way down to the bottom floor of the archives, this acts as your warpable bonfire for the area and your base of operations for acquiring Seath's Lord Soul. Overlooking the courtyard leading to the Crystal Caves, you get a lovely view to relax by. Its utility for the archives is unmatched, and its aesthetics are lovely. Is that a broken texture? No. That's called personality. Serve it, darling! At number 14, you may be shocked, it's the Firelink Altar Lord Vessel. In terms of the lore, this is one of the most important locations in the game, and is boosted by a gorgeous aesthetic with the ancient temple around you. And once the kiln is unlocked, you get a lovely view of those spooky stairs leading downwards. The only reason it's not higher is that it only gets usage unlocking the golden barriers to Izalith, the Archives, and Nito, and in the final moments of the game where you storm the kiln. I think the best bonfires should be used more consistently, but I could see people making a case for the Lord Vessel being top 3 or top 2 if we're going from a lore perspective. At number 13, we have the newly added in the remaster Catacombs Blacksmith bonfire. For anyone not comfortable doing the crazy catacomb shortcuts, Getting down to Vamos doesn't take terribly long, and gives you instant access to the Bonewheel skeletons, skipping 2/3 of the level. This bonfire was added specifically in Dark Souls Remastered to give people easier access to the blacksmith for upgrading weapons down his specific paths. So that utility is through the roof, and as I said, it provides a very simple boss run to Pinwheel as long as you can handle the Bonewheel skeletons. So let me just quickly show you how to do the parkour to get down there alive, so you too can benefit from this bonfire. Please watch. At number 12, we have the prison cell bonfire in the Duke's Archives. Easily one of my favourite moments of the game, this bonfire is the antithesis of every other bonfire up to this point, as you cannot warp away. You have to escape Seath's jail tower yourself. I want to see more moments like this in Souls games, taking player expectations and subverting them in fun and unique ways. This bonfire is here not for the bonfire itself, but for what it means. That being said, I wouldn't complain though if after you escape the prison tower, it then triggers that bonfire to allow warping. It's the only issue I have that keeps it out of my top 10. At number 11, missing out barely, is the singular hidden bonfire of Sen's Fortress. On a small isolated balcony, easily missable, it rewards players who really want to explore the environment and acts as a nice checkpoint so players don't have to run through the funhouse of fuckery all over again. Wish I knew about it on my first playthrough. I'm keeping you out of the top 10 through pure spite because I can hold a grudge, bitch. It's so well placed, so sneaky, and so on brand for its area, and deserves praise, just not top 10 because trauma. Starting off our top 10, we have the Depths bonfire, awaiting us behind a locked door. This bonfire is a warpable location and a great source for farming green titanite shards in the early game using the slime hallway outside. It's perfectly placed in the level to make you think about whether to progress forwards or double back and restock your Estus. But I love that you have to unlock the bonfire yourself by progressing further into the sewers first. More of that in future titles, please. You can also just master key the door, but nobody with a master key is coming through the depths anyway. The bonfire only loses a higher placement for its lack of real aesthetic. It's a very bland room, but is perfectly placed in the level. At number 9, we have the Painted World of Ariamis bonfire. Another case of a bonfire you cannot warp from. It is your sole respite in this cold, ruinous village full of peaceful and kind individuals. Those corpse spikes and that single crow vibing really add to the ambiance here. This bonfire also benefits from extremely tight level design that revolves around re-accessing the bonfire via the main gate, making it the real focal point of this level and the only true warmth around you. Striking visually, thematically, and another example of developers playing with the idea of bonfires, you gotta love it. At number 8, we have the final bonfire in the game, the First Flame itself. It only felt appropriate to include this endgame location, as your choice on whether to link the fire and light this bonfire, or leave it to an age of dark shapes the world moving forwards. It is the ultimate bonfire, and the ashy grandeur of the kiln really gives this place an aesthetic worth its weight in souls. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing the kiln erupt into flame once more as you join the list of those who linked the fire. At number 7, going from last to first, we have the Northern Undead Asylum Courtyard Bonfire. This is the first bonfire in the game and introduces you to the serotonin of lighting up your first point of safety. It acts as a nice focal point for the level to come, as you unlock a shortcut back to it later, and on a return visit, it's a nice checkpoint for both the optional boss and the Black Knight guarding the peculiar doll. But it's mainly here for the iconic nature of it being the first ever bonfire in a Souls game. And it deserves its flowers. You go, girl. At number 6, just missing out on the top 5, is the Ulasil Township entrance bonfire obtained by defeating Knight Artorias in the DLC. This is probably one of my most used bonfires in the game, as I always max it to 20. It's my personal hub for the township level, Calamite and Manus, thanks to the shortcut elevator down to the chasm back in the Royal Woods. You get a striking visual looking out over the ruined Ulasil and seeing everywhere you'll be exploring, while the large Colosseum lords behind you. This was also a PvP hotspot back in the day, so extra bonus utility points there. At number 5, we have my ultimate aesthetically pleasing bonfire, the first you find in Ash Lake, on a calm sand dune overlooking the murky waters beyond, and if you followed Siegmeyer's questline, a tragic end met here. If you watched my area ranking videos, you'll know Ash Lake is one of my favorite areas aesthetically, and being able to look out into this ocean of darkness, not knowing what lies beneath, the thought of being somewhere grand out of your element, this bonfire encompasses that. I'd be lying to myself if I put this bonfire any lower. That view of the lake will stick with me for so many years to come. At number 4, we have the Daughter of Chaos bonfire in Quelaag's Domain. This is the ultimate Covenant bonfire, as unlike every other location in the game, this bonfire and its Firekeeper can allow you to skip both Demon Ruins boss fights and head straight to Lost Izalith, while also saving Solaire in the process. The visual design is appropriate and makes me a little bit nauseous, honestly, with all the eggs and spidery motifs, but this is my hub bonfire for everything to do with Blighttown, the Demon Ruins, and Lost Izalith, making it so very valuable to me and any of my future runs. A worthy contender for best bonfire in the game, if only it weren't attached to some of the worst areas of the game. At number 3, we have the Undead Berg bonfire. We all know why this bonfire places where it does. It's the halfway point of the first real level of the game, separating you from the easy enemies you just fought through and the harder enemies that lurk beyond. It allows you a chance to retreat if need be, it's a nice safe space, but the reason it's here is because the level design revolves so heavily around this bonfire. Not only is it right by the shortcut to Lower Undead Berg, but more importantly, this bonfire placement blows minds when you cross the Hellkite Bridge, kick that ladder, and realize where you are. For many, this is their bonfire that gets them through both the Undead Berg and the Undead Parish, and represents the struggle of all of our first playthroughs as we learned the ropes and explored for the first time. At number 2, we have the Undead Parish bonfire, sitting right at the intersection between Sen's Fortress, Darkroot Garden and Basin, and the Undead Parish. It's a perfectly placed bonfire that gives players access to multiple areas, and a fun challenge in the Titanite demon placed just below. Of course, though, this bonfire is home to Andre of Astora, your main blacksmith who doesn't want to see you go hollow. There is nothing more soothing than warping here and hearing that familiar tinkering of a blacksmith hammer and knowing you are in a completely safe space. Well, that is except for... Number 1, it's Firelink Shrine. I really tried to be contrarian for the sake of playing devil's advocate, but there is no bonfire, let alone checkpoint in the series, more iconic than Firelink Shrine. Your hub of the game, your safe space amidst a land of danger and peril, where your friends you meet along the way come to sell their wares and rest their weary heads. The familiar melody that lets you know it's okay to sit for a moment. There's a reason why taking that elevator down from the parish and seeing Firelink is so striking. And as Firelink connects to so many different areas, it's placed perfectly within the world to give you the best chance of success. And even plays with expectations when it's snuffed out after ringing both bells of awakening, forcing you to march onwards in your journey to get your safe space back. There is no better place to end this video than right here, relaxing next to Firelink Shrine. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. 90% of my viewers aren't subscribed after all. Let's rectify that. All of my socials are on screen now. Feel free to follow me where you feel comfortable. A shout out to all my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me for another month. You guys are the reason I can even continue making videos. Thank you so much. So that's the end of Dark Souls month. I'll see you guys next week when I start delving into my backlog again to look at Chained Echoes, a JRPG released at the end of last year. Bye bye!